Adolf Hitler's defeat and the dark myths surrounding it. Part 1. Today, we delve into one of the most infamous figures in human history, Adolf Hitler, and the many mysterious, dark, and even eerie stories that surround his ultimate defeat in World War II. But before we get into the tactical and strategic errors that led to his downfall, we must explore the legends, myths, and occult rumors that have circulated for decades. These stories aren't just idle gossip. They are part of the fascination with a man whose actions shaped and scarred the modern world. Some historians dismiss them outright, but for many they add a layer of intrigue that conventional history textbooks rarely provide. Hitler's rise to power, according to these tales, was not merely the result of political maneuvering or economic turmoil. Some myths suggest he was guided, or even empowered, by secret societies with occult knowledge. Among the most frequently mentioned is the Thule Society, a Bavarian group obsessed with esoteric knowledge, Aryan mythology, and mystical interpretations of history. Legends say that the Thule Society provided Hitler with not only ideological direction, but also ritualistic tools intended to influence the outcomes of battles and political events. These stories claim that his connection with occultists was far from superficial. He supposedly participated in secret ceremonies, consulted with mystics, and even carried talismans believed to protect him or grant supernatural insight. One of the most persistent myths concerns Hitler's obsession with the mystical and the supernatural. In addition to his political ambitions, he is said to have collected rare artifacts, ancient manuscripts, and sacred relics, objects believed by some to hold magical or spiritual power. From Egyptian amulets to Nordic symbols, these items allegedly played a role in his worldview and his decisions. Followers of this narrative suggest that these objects were not merely decorative or symbolic, but served as conduits for unseen forces. And when some of these objects were removed, destroyed, or otherwise disturbed, it is said that Hitler's luck, or even his decision-making, suffered dramatically. Astrology and prophecy are other areas where myths flourish. Hitler's rumored to have relied on astrologers and seers to predict the outcomes of battles, invasions, and political moves. Some versions of the story claim that he had a team of clairvoyants providing guidance on everything from the timing of military offensives to personal decisions about whom to trust within his inner circle. One of the more enduring legends states that certain prophecies explicitly predicted his downfall, yet he either ignored or misinterpreted them. Whether it was pride, overconfidence, or sheer disbelief in these mystical warnings, the result, according to the myths, was catastrophic. These stories also extend to military planning. According to some accounts, Hitler possessed secret maps and devices believed to reveal hidden opportunities on the battlefield. These were supposedly connected to mystical forces or even coded messages from the occult world. The legend goes that these maps occasionally misled him, causing key strategic blunders. While no hard evidence supports this, the narrative has persisted in books, documentaries, and online forums, captivating audiences with the idea that Hitler's defeat was not solely due to conventional military opposition, but also to unseen mystical interference. Another striking element in these tales concerns the psychological atmosphere within Hitler's command. Rumors suggest that he cultivated a sense of fear and superstition among his officers through strange habits and rituals. Some accounts describe his obsession with shadows, mirrors, and symbolic displays in his offices, creating an environment where officers felt constantly watched, not only by human eyes, but, according to the myths, by supernatural ones. This paranoia allegedly led to hesitation, confusion, and internal sabotage, as generals feared acting against or making decisions that might anger him or invoke mystical consequences. The list of so-called cursed objects tied to Hitler is extensive. These range from ceremonial daggers and ancient relics to personal items he believed were imbued with power. One story claims that a small amulet he wore during early campaigns was cursed, bringing misfortune to those around him while initially seeming to grant him success. When the artifact was damaged or removed, disasters began to strike German units on multiple fronts. While historians largely reject such claims as superstition, they form a significant part of the folklore surrounding the Third Reich's decline. Even the battlefield itself is said to have carried mystical consequences. Ghost stories abound, particularly surrounding the Eastern Front and the ruins of bombed cities in Germany. Tales circulate that the spirits of soldiers, civilians, and victims haunted Hitler's staff, influencing moods, decisions, and morale. The idea that the dead could impact the living in tangible ways might sound absurd, yet these stories gain traction in post-war literature and conspiracy discussions, providing a sense of cosmic justice or dark inevitability to the Nazi defeat. Rumors also speak of hidden Nazi technologies. Conspiracy theorists suggest Hitler pursued advanced weapons, secret research, and even extraterrestrial technology to turn the tide of the war. These myths claim that these devices either malfunctioned or rebelled in some inexplicable manner, further contributing to his failure. From mysterious aircraft designs to alleged death rays and energy weapons. These stories, though entirely speculative, underscore the fascination with a regime seeking not only political domination, but control over forces beyond human comprehension. Adolf Hitler's defeat and the dark myths surrounding it. Part 2. As the war progressed, the web of myths and dark stories surrounding Hitler only deepened. While historians point to strategic overreach, logistical failures, and the overwhelming power of the Allies as the primary reasons for Germany's defeat, folklore offers a far more sinister explanation. According to popular legend, Hitler's closest allies and generals were not merely human collaborators. They were also influenced consciously or unconsciously by the same dark forces that some claim had guided Hitler's rise. One of the more enduring rumors concerns internal sabotage within the Nazi leadership. While disagreements, power struggles, and personal vendettas undoubtedly existed, some stories exaggerate these events into tales of almost mystical betrayal. It is said that certain high-ranking officers deliberately acted against Hitler's wishes. Yet they were portrayed, in these legends, as instruments of fate, guided by unseen powers determined to ensure the downfall of the Third Reich. The mythology suggests that Hitler's inability to detect or counteract these influences was not a mere oversight, but part of a larger, almost cosmic plan orchestrated by forces beyond human comprehension. Adding to this sense of inevitability were the so-called cursed objects and artifacts present in Hitler's inner circle. Tales claim that certain relics, amulets, and even furniture items were imbued with negative energy. Officers who came into contact with these objects allegedly experienced misfortune, confusion, or an overwhelming sense of dread. The legend goes that these artifacts were originally acquired during Nazi expeditions to Egypt, Tibet, and other regions, supposedly containing hidden powers that could be used to manipulate human destiny. Over time, however, these powers allegedly turned against their possessors, causing errors in judgment and catastrophic failures on the battlefield. Some myths even suggest that Hitler himself became aware of these backfires but ignored the warnings, too obsessed with his belief in destiny and the occult to heed practical advice. The idea is compelling. a man whose hubris and obsession with the supernatural blinded him to reality, ultimately paving the way for his downfall. Whether true or not, this narrative reinforces the notion that Hitler's defeat was not simply the product of conventional warfare, but also the result of an almost mythological struggle between light and dark forces. Psychological horror also plays a role in these stories. The atmosphere inside Hitler's command bunkers is often described as unnerving and almost supernatural in its intensity. According to legend, the Führer's obsession with ritual, symmetry, and symbolic imagery created an environment in which officers feared not only reprisal from Hitler himself, but also the metaphysical consequences of his actions. Mirrors, shadows, and ancient symbols adorned his offices and private quarters, instilling a sense of constant surveillance, not just by human eyes, but, according to folklore, by unseen spiritual observers. This in turn allegedly contributed to poor morale, hesitation, and strategic errors, compounding the human failures with an almost otherworldly pressure. The Eastern Front is particularly rich in myth. Soldiers and civilians alike circulated stories of ghostly apparitions and cursed battlefields, claiming that the spirits of the dead had a tangible impact on living troops. One story recounts German soldiers refusing to enter certain villages, convinced that the souls of the fallen were actively influencing the war. While these accounts are almost certainly exaggerated or entirely fabricated, they demonstrate the human tendency to explain the horrors of war in terms of cosmic justice, supernatural interference, or divine retribution. In addition to psychological and spiritual myths, technological legends played a large part in the folklore. Conspiracy theorists argue that Hitler pursued secret weapons, sometimes fantastical in nature, intended to change the course of the war. These include stories of advanced aircraft, death rays, and other mysterious machines that allegedly failed at critical moments due to interference from occult forces, or the intrinsic curses tied to Nazi experimentation. While modern historians largely dismiss these claims as fiction, the stories persist in documentaries, forums, and popular culture, feeding the perception that Hitler's loss was orchestrated by a combination of human failure and supernatural misfortune. Even after the war, the myths continued. Survivors of Hitler's inner circle, as well as ordinary citizens who lived through bombings and occupation, contributed stories that blurred the line between fact and fiction. Tales of hidden chambers, secret rituals, and cursed documents circulate in books, online forums, and YouTube videos to this day. These stories often suggest that Hitler's end was not merely the result of Allied might, but also the inevitable consequence of his engagement with forces beyond mortal control. Another layer to the narrative is the idea of prophetic inevitability. Many legends claim that Hitler was warned repeatedly, through astrology, seers, or mystical artifacts, about the outcome of the war. Some versions suggest he even attempted to reverse these prophecies through ritual or manipulation of the occult, only to find his efforts thwarted by forces he could neither see nor understand. This creates a compelling story of hubris meeting fate, a man who sought to control destiny itself only to be undone by it. The darker the tales, the more they capture the imagination. Ghostly sightings in bombed cities, cursed treasures and abandoned bunkers, the death curse of artifacts, and mystical miscalculations all contribute to a narrative in which Hitler's defeat is as much a story of supernatural intervention as of conventional warfare. In a way, these myths serve to explain the unexplainable, giving shape to chaos and horror through stories that are part cautionary tale, part historical curiosity, and part pure legend. It is also worth noting the human fascination with evil. Hitler's figure embodies not only political and military failure, but also moral depravity. Myths, hurrahs, and legends surrounding him amplify these aspects, portraying his defeat as a cosmic reckoning. Whether it is haunted battlefields, cursed objects, or internal betrayal by mystical design, these stories reinforce the image of a man who overreached not only politically and militarily, but spiritually and supernaturally. Finally, the enduring appeal of these stories lies in their ambiguity. We may never know how much truth exists behind tales of cursed artifacts, mystical miscalculations, and ghostly interference. What we do know is that they persist, shaping popular understanding of Hitler's defeat. They remind us that history is not just a series of dates and battles, but also a landscape for human imagination, fear, and fascination. The myths surrounding Hitler illustrate the lengths to which people will go to explain extraordinary events, blending reality with legend in ways that are simultaneously entertaining and chilling.